Hey guys, welcome back to Supposedly Fun. It has been a minute, but I wanted to come back and do my July book haul, even though it is August 1st. As expected, this book haul is not as large as the one that I had in June, which was my birthday month, but it is actually not too bad, all things considered. Most of this was actually saved by my library, which sells used books, and they had some really good selections. I got a bunch of books from there for like $1 each, so you really can't argue with that. And let's start with those books. The first one I got from the library is Rita Mae Brown's Ruby Fruit Jungle. This is a bestseller about growing up lesbian in America. Ticks pretty much all of my boxes. I cannot wait to read this. I'm hopefully going to get this in this year because, as you know, two of my reading goals for the year are to read more books by women than by men, and to read more LGBTQ books that focus on the L, the B, and the T, and not so much on the G. So this is pretty darn perfect. They also had an Untamed State by Roxane Gay. I feel ashamed that I have never read a book by Roxane Gay, whether it be fiction or nonfiction. I have heard really good things about this book. I have also heard that this is a very brutal book and kind of difficult to read in that perspective. But I've heard so many good things about it that I feel like I'm going to have to give it a try. It is about a woman who is kidnapped and held for ransom, and I believe horrible things happen to her while she is kidnapped and waiting to be rescued. But I've always wanted to read a book by Roxane Gay. I follow her on Twitter. I love her. And I've heard great things. So looking forward to that. They also had Bastard Out of Carolina by Dorothy Allison. I have heard wildly mixed things about this. I've heard a couple of people who say that they love it. It's a really great book. And I have heard some people that basically call it torture porn. So I'm kind of skeptical. But when it's for sale for $1, I feel like, why not just pick it up and see if I ever get to it and can make up my mind for myself. Basically, I believe it follows the story of a girl and her stepfather is pretty horribly abusive, from what I understand. So, there you go. Then I was really surprised to find this one at my library. It's Happiness by Aminata Forna. This one, the premise of it sounds odd to me. I'm just being fully honest. So basically, a fox makes its way across the Waterloo Bridge in London. The distraction causes two pedestrians to collide. Jean, an American studying the habits of urban foxes, and Attila, a Ghanaian psychiatrist. From this chance encounter, Aminata Forna's unerring powers of observation show how in the midst of the rush of a great city lie numerous moments of connection. I mean, the connection part sounds interesting. The setup sounds contrived. And I don't know how I feel about that. And part of it feels like, what is the connection between these two going to be, and is that going to be believable? And as this book was just recently part of the BookTube Prize, it was discussed a lot last week. And Sean the Book Maniac, in his video, I'll link it down below, by the way, kind of tied into a lot of the concerns that I had about it. However, Doris over at All D Books absolutely loved this book and had a lot of really great things to say about it. And even though she also had a lot of really great things to say about An American Marriage by Tayari Jones, and by the way, I will link Doris's video down below as well, it really got me intrigued. So I'm very glad that I did find this at the library, and I'm kind of eager to see what I think of it when I get to it. Then we get to my Book of the Month picks, and I picked two. The first one that I picked, my official Book of the Month pick, was Three Women by Lisa Taddeo. And I was really excited to read this. It sounds like a fascinating book, something that would be right up my alley. It basically promises to explore the desires and erotic lives of three different women in America. Lisa Taddeo, it's described as Lisa Taddeo embedded herself in their lives for several years. I can't remember exactly how many, past 8 years. Lisa Taddeo has driven across the country 6 times to embed herself with ordinary women from different regions and backgrounds. The result, Three Women, is the deepest nonfiction portrait of desire ever written and one of the most anticipated books of the year. I mean, I was really sold on that. I was really excited. Then, Jacqueline from 6 Minutes for Me read it and expressed that she had some concerns about it. And I watched her video of it. I think it was last week that she published it. And she had some concerns because it is billed as being about desire, and in fact, some of what happens to these women has nothing to do with desire. It actually is sexual assault, and coercion and things like that, and billing it as a book about desire is then problematic. And I agree with that, even though I haven't read it. So part of me is still looking forward to this, because I think that, those stories are still worth telling, but it is problematic if it's being marketed as about desire. So I'm a little more leery of this book, for sure. But I still hope to get to it and see what I think. That seems to be a common theme with some of these books. I'm a little nervous, but would like to get to it myself and make up my own mind. I will link Jacqueline's video down below as well. The other book that I got from Book of the Month Club is The Far Field by Madhuri Vijay. And this book just sounds really interesting to me. Again, something that sounds right up my alley. It is a debut novel that follows one woman's search for a lost figure from her childhood, a journey that carries her from southern India to Kashmir and to the brink of a devastating political and personal reckoning. It kind of reminds me of A Fine Balance by Rahinton Mishry, which I read earlier this year and absolutely loved. I've heard great things about this pretty unanimously. From anybody on BookTube who has read it, so I'm really looking forward to this. It is a kind of chunky book. It is over 400 pages, doesn't hit 500, but I'm really looking forward to it. I've heard so many good things, and like I said, the subject matter of it really speaks to me. So there are those. And then from my local independent bookstore, I had ordered this book. It's a graphic novel called The Pervert by Remy Boydell, directed by Michelle Perez. And I don't know what the directed means, because I believe it was illustrated by Remy Boydell as well, but whatever. So this is described as a surprisingly honest and touching account of a trans girl surviving through sex work in Seattle. I have actually read this. I finished it. It's really not a long book. So, and graphic novels read quickly anyway, so I read it in a day. And I will talk about it more. I think, all I will say is, I think that it doesn't delve into the narrative part very much, but it is a very interesting story. And I think it's a story worth telling, and I think it's a story that does not get told enough, because so often LGBTQ people in general, but especially trans people, do get forced into sex work just to get by. And that is something that more people need to be aware of, and the impact that it has on that person. So, but I'll talk about this more. So I got that from an independent bookstore. The used bookstore in town had a copy of Housemaid of Dawn by N. Scott. I don't know if that's Momaday or Momaday or how you say it. And actually, not only did my used bookstore have this, they had it in their discount section, which I just happened to be looking through. And the reason I picked this up is that this is a Pulitzer Prize winner. So it is actually part of my Pulitzer Prize project. This is in 1969, Housemaid of Dawn became the first novel by a Native American to win the Pulitzer Prize. To my knowledge, it is still the only novel by a Native American to win the Pulitzer Prize. It is about the struggle of a man who cannot understand or be understood, a man who is integrated with neither the traditions of his Indian heritage nor the ways of the white world. And that sounds interesting and relevant, because it is going to be part of my Pulitzer Prize project. So actually ended up being pretty easy to find. And then lastly, 3 books that Matthew Sharapa was kind enough to send to me. I am really looking forward to How We Fight for Our Lives. He had gotten a copy of this at Book Expo and was kind enough to send it along to me. I'm really looking forward to reading it. This is a memoir about growing up queer and black in America, and a lot of how I read, or why I read, is to hear other points of view outside of my own, and that is a perspective that I think is very needed in the world right now, and something that I think as a white man, something that's really important for me to dig a little deeper into and understand. He also was kind enough to send me a book from the publisher he works called Prince and Knight, which is a really adorable picture book about a prince whose parents want him to marry, so they introduce him to all these different princesses, and then of course he meets a knight, and I won't spoil what happens, but you can probably guess. It's a really adorable book, and I really just love the fact that books like this exist nowadays. It makes my heart happy. And he also sent me my first big book of trucks, which is a coloring book, and the reason he sent it to me is right there. kind of looks familiar, doesn't it? Basically, it me, basically, as the kids say. There is also, here it is, an illustration of it inside, so I can color myself if I want to. Anybody jealous? You should be. So there you go. Thank you, Matthew, to those. Thank you to Matthew for those 3 books. Really appreciate it. And these are the books that I have brought into my library in the month of July. So far, I have not brought anything into my library in the month of August, but it's the first day of the month, so I'm sure that will turn around. I would love to hear if there's anything new that you brought into your library, if there's anything among these that you would say get to pronto, or maybe put it on the back burner, maybe just run and hide and steer clear completely. As always, really thank you for your time watching this video. I always appreciate it, and I will be back again. Until then, happy reading.